Welcome back to the show. I am so thrilled to announce that I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Heidi Underwood, and she has been a cellist in Inner Voice Academy since, I believe, what was it, February 2024, right?
I believe so, yeah. February or March.
Amazing. Yeah, somewhere around there. And you've been in the program for quite a few months. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions on what has your experience been like? Because Heidi actually has a very unique situation where she travels quite a bit, but she still has some goals regarding music that we actually have found a way to help her achieve. But before we go into any of that, Heidi, can you introduce yourself to the audience? Can you tell me just a little bit about yourself? Like, what do you do? Do you have any stories of how you got to where you are now? So curious to know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today, Ina. So I'm Heidi Underwood, and my background is in nursing. So I majored in nursing. I worked at a hospital doing a traditional job for about 16 years. And I just kind of realized over time, I think it was great. I loved it. But I was kind of struggling with wanting more time freedom and not being able to travel like I wanted to travel. I had to ask for, permission to get time off, and I might not be able to get as much time off as I wanted or the weeks that I wanted. And I really didn't want to give up that time with my family because we travel a lot with my parents and my cousins. And I just always knew like that's so important. And I didn't want to be missing out on that and regretting it later. And so in 2020, I decided to make a huge change and I left my stable hospital job. And since 2020, I have been doing full-time travel nurse anesthetist jobs around the hospital, around the country, where I just contract with the hospital and provide anesthesia where they're short-staffed. And it's been such a great move. One of the challenges has been that and at the time I was learning violin and I had met Ina and I knew she was just so passionate about the cello. It's just like it's so contagious, Ina. I love it. And you had talked to me about how if I would learn the cello, I could get so much better at the violin just because of all the things that they're similar in ways, and you could teach me different things that would also apply to playing the violin. And so Ina has been working with me, even though I'm traveling a lot and gone a lot, to just work on learning the cello when I am home. She's given me good tips on how to practice when I'm home, but also how to practice mentally on the road. So that's been really cool.
Heidi, thank you for sharing with me more of your story. Like, I knew that you were a nurse, like that was your background. I knew you did anesthesia, but um I did not know that you kind of contract yourself out. Like, that's very entrepreneurial. Like, you have to pitch yourself to the various hospitals, and at the same time you have a dream of having music as a part of your life. So tell me more kind of what that looks like as you're traveling. Like, how much are you home? What does cello playing in your life look like?
So in this season, I'm gone a lot.
Hmm.
I'm gone 3, sometimes 4 weeks a month, but I am usually home on the weekends, at least here and there. I'm not home every weekend, but one thing that's been amazing to me is how much you can get out of a short practice session on the days I am home. Like I feel like I have no time to practice, but then I realize that's a lie because I sit down and I practice and I'm literally astounded by how much progress I make in the little bits of time when I'm home. But I think it's such a huge part that you have taught me mental practice. So even though I'm not picking up my cello when I'm gone, I'm still thinking about it and I'm
Yeah.
still practicing things in my head that when I come home and pick it up, it's like my brain remembers, oh yeah, this is what we
Hmm.
do. And that's been really
Yeah,
cool.
I have seen that in you. Like, you go for a trip, maybe 2, 3 weeks at a time. You come back, and at class, it's like you haven't missed a beat, pun intended, of course. You haven't skipped a beat. And it's because mental practice, actually, your brain doesn't perceive it as any different. Your brain thinks that what you're imagining vividly actually is happening. So if there's one of you listening to this episode and you're thinking, I travel a lot. Like, I would love to learn music. Just know that Heidi is like a testimony of someone who has done such an amazing job of taking the initiative to figure out ways to practice mentally, and I help her create practice plans based on her travel schedule, but she really has taken the initiative and taken action on applying that. And what that means is that there's really a way that no matter your life circumstance, you can make the most of the time that you actually are with the cello by what you do when you're away from the cello. So then it's a beautiful cycle where the learning continues, like it never really stops. And then you can have the benefits that the cello can provide, even if you're crazy busy. Like, even if you're the kind of person who, like, you don't think that you even have time for even a 5-minute practice session, there's a way to actually do it in the background. And then your brain will grow. So I'm really curious, just from a uh, payoff perspective, like, what has the cello done for you? How has it transformed you? How do you feel after you play? What do you love most about the cello?
That's such a good question. I feel like I love so many things about it, but one thing is some days my job is very stressful, or traveling can be stressful, just like day-to-day life can be very stressful. And just taking that time to even if I just listen to the cello, if I'm not near my cello, or listening to music in general, but picking up the cello too, it's so just like calms your nervous system,
Yeah.
kind of helps you reset. Like I know you've talked about how
Mm-hmm.
you can change your mood just by playing like
Yeah.
certain notes. That has been really
Mm-hmm.
cool.
That is so amazing. And you're the person who has been able to experience that because you're in the program. So I talk about all these things on the podcast, but when I am able to have a student as a guest on the podcast, then you can really speak from, you've experienced it. You haven't just imagined what it could be like. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation, so that people can be inspired and feel the hope that this is possible for them too. So thank you for sharing that, Heidi. I'm curious from a music perspective now, like that we've talked about the outcome that you've achieved in your life. From a music perspective, how have you grown as a musician? Because you mentioned you started as someone who wanted to play the violin, and I'd love to know like some of your struggles there, and how has Inner Voice Academy helped you with your music goals?
Absolutely. So I grew up playing in like um kind of like a marching band, basic band. I played flute.
Mm,
I took some piano lessons. So I have some background in music. I knew how to read sheet music, but it had been quite a while since I'd really done it
mm,
intentionally. So I needed some refreshing there. But your course, the Simply Sound like 8 module course that walks
yeah.
you through reading music again, or if you've never learned it from the beginning, like it was just so good and foundational just to get those basics down. And I think I missed, even though I had all these years of band playing and piano playing, somewhere along the line I missed so much of the theory part and like rhythm. I
Mm,
mean, I knew how to count to a point, but there was just so many things that I was missing that I didn't even know I didn't know. And going through your
mm-hmm.
course and then taking lessons with you, I mean, I have learned 10 times what I knew before I started, and I've only been in the program a few months.
That is amazing. Like that just makes me so happy to hear. That's the transformation I want for you, because if you don't know what you don't know, then you can't start to know what you want to know.
That's so true.
And that's like the long way of saying, I think we're resisting learning the theory possibly before you joined Inner Voice Academy. So tell me a little bit more about that. Why do you think you were resisting learning the theory? Like, were you scared of it, or maybe intimidated? I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just
Yeah.
love to know from you.
No, I think it was both of those things. I
Mm.
actually bought the book Music Theory for Dummies, but I never read it.
Oh,
So like I knew it
because
to a
you're not
point
a
that I
dummy.
didn't, there were things missing. But I think I was completely intimidated. I mean, it's like a thick book.
Mm. Hmm.
I, and it just seems so abstract
Yeah,
when you
when it's
don't
not
know.
applied. Yeah.
Yes. That I don't know. I just resisted it because I was
Hmm.
afraid it was going to be over my head and I wasn't going to get it.
Yeah.
And you made
I
it so
remember
simple.
I'm so glad to hear that. And that reminds me of a conversation we had when we were working through like some of the initial building blocks of learning theory. You were telling me that when you became a nurse, there was this theoretical section, right? That was like not very practical. And I think remind me if I'm wrong. I think you said that theory section of becoming a nurse, still you don't really apply it. Or what were you talking about there?
I'm trying to remember what that would have been about. Um,
I think
I mean,
probably yeah, you go ahead.
I know in nursing school, like you learn a lot of stuff in theory, but then when you get out in the
Mm-hmm.
real world, it doesn't really, you either never use it or that's not
Mm-hmm.
really how it works when you actually get into practice.
Yeah. Yeah, that
That
must have
might
been
have
it.
been what it was. I'm
Yeah, I
not
think
sure.
that's probably what it
Sorry.
was. And oh, no worries at all. I'm just trying to piece together how you started really enjoying theory, because you started seeing how it helped you actually achieve your goals on the cello. And along that line, I'd love to know what are your goals on the cello? And then we could revisit that theory question because I know that a lot of people are worried about the theory being something intimidating or extra that they have to learn just because it's something you have to learn. So tell me, like, what are your goals on the cello? And then we can start tying some of the pieces together.
Yeah. Well, so like I would love to be to the point where I could play in like a praise and worship band at my church or
I love
play at
that.
like farmers markets and wineries in the summer and just like, make a fun hobby out of it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really want to go like professional, but good and able to make beautiful music that other people can enjoy too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if that
I
makes
love
sense.
that. Oh, that makes so much sense. I love that goal for you. And you've mentioned a little bit about that because we always revisit our goals like on a monthly basis. But I'm going to write down that specific one for you because that is so possible. And what I can tell you want is you want to feel like you're competent enough for other people to also enjoy the music. And that's sometimes
Yes.
where we can get the most pleasure out of creating music is when other people start enjoying it too. It's an amazing way of communicating our emotions, our stories, and it's a very safe way of communicating it because if we use words, it could be interpreted a different way. But with music, people can interpret the music based on their own experiences or how they're feeling at the moment. And it can be a source of comfort that not only you're feeling understood, but they feel understood too with just one medium of communication instead of a back and forth.
Yes.
And what I can see you doing as well is possibly playing with other people in those settings to have even more enjoyment with the music creation process. So then there is like the back and forth of the instruments talking to each other. But I think that that is such a beautiful goal because it helps us
Thank you.
solidify the foundations. And the foundations is really how you can
Yes.
achieve that goal. The theory is part of it. And the theory can really be very practical and so much fun. Would you say that like the rhythm classes, the theory type classes, those are some of the most fun, right?
Yes, they definitely are. And it makes the whole like foundation so much more simpler when you
Yeah,
understand the theory behind it because now
yeah.
it all just clicks and you're like not thinking
Mm-hmm.
so hard about memorizing. You just
Yeah,
understand it.
yeah. Because we're building your brain. We're building the muscles in the
Yes.
brain that helps you do it. It's if we were to tie this back to like sports, be almost like someone doing various drills. Like let's just take tennis as an example. They may do like back forehand drills, backhand drills. They might do like shorter distances or serving drills. And then when it's actually the game, they can combine it all. And when you learn the theory first in a really, well, not necessarily first, but alongside the instrument, like the more fun stuff, then when you're actually starting to improvise, you start to write music and you start to learn music faster from other people, then you have all these foundational skills that you can just pull from. And then it's so fast, so satisfying. So I'm really excited that you brought that up. That is such a good point. And now that we've kind of looked at like what are your biggest like aspirations with the cello, why do you do it? What were some of the biggest struggles you faced when you were trying to learn violin?
I think the biggest thing has been like showing up consistently to practice,
Mm-hmm.
both with the violin and the cello. But
Yeah.
one thing that I'm finding is that like I wanted to, initially learn the cello because I want to make beautiful music, which I do, but I'm realizing it's so much more than that. Like when I
Mm-hmm.
consistently day after day sit down and play my cello when I'm home, that sets up my whole day for like to stay in motion and to get more
I
things
love
done
that.
and to be productive. And
Mm-hmm.
it makes me more disciplined in other areas that I need to be disciplined in.
Mm.
And I didn't expect that.
Whoa. That's amazing. That's amazing because we think that music is just this hobby. It's maybe a phase we're going through, and then it may trickle away or fade away from our lives when in fact it can be so much more. I love how you phrased it like it sets your day up for success. It helps you be more disciplined. And one thing that I teach in Inner Voice Academy is how the practice structure can actually be a reflection of your ideal day. Like you start with something more foundational, grounding, like meditation. Then you go into something a little more technical, something that builds up your skills. Um, and then you go into like the meat of the day, like your work day. And then finally you end with movie night or whatever. And this is like the fun part where you get to enjoy the hard work. And a practice session like that, we structured where in just 15 to 18 minutes, you can like essentially visualize your entire day, like the feelings that that day will create for you. And when you can create that in your practice, you visualize and you basically script out what that day will feel like. And then the feelings and the emotions put you into action because that's essentially what emotions do. The root of the word is motion, emotion. So we want to create the right emotions in the beginning of our day, just like you've experienced, so that we can actually have action and momentum starting to build. So what I love most about what you just said is you have it as a way to kind of kickstart your day. It's like you're revving the engine, starting it up, and then you're ready to go. Is that kind of how you'd
Yeah.
like, describe the feeling of after you practice too?
Yes, that's exactly. And actually, I never thought about that before, but I think it is so much that it's partly showing up for myself and sitting down to practice. But
Mm-hmm.
then also, I'm sure a huge part of it is that it's, shifting my mood and my emotions and
Mm-hmm.
all of that to be in the right mindset for the rest of my
Mm-hmm.
day. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even think about that till you just said that. That is
That
really
is so
neat.
cool. Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
I have two more questions for you. So the first one is, how would you describe your experience was with getting started with Inner Voice Academy? And the reason I ask that is sometimes people wonder, what is it going to be like when I hit the pay button? Like what is it going to look like afterwards? I know what I want out of it, but what's it going to look like? So what was your onboarding experience like, finding a cello, anything like that you do in the beginning?
I just remember being so excited when I decided to go all in and hit the button, pay the
Mm-hmm.
money, and then I got like right away instant access to the portal and I could just take off running, going through your modules. It was super easy, super well laid out. Like here's step
Good.
one, step two, all the way through 8 modules. And it's super satisfying. It lets you see your progress and you know where you're at. And it's in a very sequential order that just kind of teaches your brain, meets you where you are as a beginner, and then, builds on that as you go through the modules. And then finding a cello was not hard at all. Um, I actually knew of a music shop here because I have a violin, so I had been there before.
Mm,
And so that's where I got my cello. But I
amazing.
know and remember that you were willing to call around and help me find a cello if I needed to. And then you walked me through the process of like, should I rent to own? Should I just buy it? All of that. You made it super simple and just like able to keep that excitement and not be distracted by a bunch of, difficult things in the way. It was such a simple process.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's really what I want for every person joining the academy is to know that you're going to be supported every single step of the way. You'll always know your next step. And sometimes, and this is actually a statistic I've been reading about, is buyer's regret actually happens 48 hours after you hit pay.
Hmm.
So I was thinking about that, and I obviously don't want anybody to have buyer's regret when they join my program. So if I can make the first 2 days, the first 90 days even feel extra supported and just like get them set up so well, then they won't experience as much of like that ebb and flow So regardless of what you buy and how you invest in yourself, sometimes you get into this spot where it's called the river of misery. You're like, okay, this actually is taking some work, effort, time, and you still remember what it felt like to have that excitement in the beginning, like the reason you even clicked pay to begin with. But then you get into the river of misery. But the cool thing is when you can keep going through it, you can wade through the river, you go through the valley, then you can go up to the mountain, and then you see, wow, I've come so far. And I'm so grateful that you experienced that you had, like, you experienced the hard work of getting to where you are now, but you've built so many deep roots and foundations, like through the Simply Sound Foundations course, that you're able to start enjoying the process. And I'm just so grateful that that was your experience, because I want other people to know that you can experience this too. Like the person listening, that's who I'm talking to.
Yes,
So I'm so
absolutely.
grateful. That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
My final question, this is something I ask every guest on the show, whether they play the cello or not. So I normally phrase it a certain way. If you were to play the cello, but in your case, I'll just say, now that you do play the cello, what would be your dream song? Like if you could play anything on the cello at all, what would be your dream song? And for you specifically, I'll
Oh
actually write
man.
this down, and well, we can work towards it.
I think like the things that make me the most happy and like instantly shift me into just like no matter what's going on, I'm like, it's gonna be okay. Like I love praise and worship songs, but I would probably pick like Brown Eyed Girl or some island song that's
Love
just like
that.
fun and upbeat and
Yeah.
you can just kind of jam to it
Mm-hmm.
and let all your cares drift away. That's what I would say.
Amazing. Okay, I'm actually gonna write that down as soon as we get off. I have my pen ready to answer that, for your answer for that question. But I love that, because once again, you're going to the root of why you play. Like it's a way for you to process emotion and just relax. And if you had that song as like a tool in your arsenal, then you could go into the emotion that you want to be feeling. And I love how you said like island, some kind of island song. We all want to feel like we're able to go on a mini vacation for even just 15 minutes. And with the
Yes.
cello, it's like we're transported into that new world. So I love that. That's incredible. Well, Heidi, thank you for spending this time with me and chatting about what the program has done for you, how your experience was. I so value you in the program. You bring such a joy and enthusiasm for the cello, and just a mindset of consistency, and you follow through. Like you're committed for the long haul, and you know that learning the cello is something that can benefit you every stage of life. So your commitment means the world to me, and I'm just so grateful that I get to coach you on the cello, and that I get to inspire you along the way. Thank you.
That's amazing. Yes, I'm so grateful to have you as the person coaching me too and giving me lessons. And like maybe people aren't wondering, but I went from playing violin to playing cello,
Mhm.
honestly, because I knew I could learn a lot from you. But the reason I did sign up for these cello lessons is because I wanted to work with you specifically.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. And it's been,
You're so
I mean,
kind.
yeah, you're incredible to learn from.
Thank you. That is so sweet. And that's my goal. I want you to feel so inspired and excited every time you touch the cello. And I feel like we've started to achieve that. So I'm so glad.
Yes.
Thank you again so much, Heidi. And
Thank you.
thank you to the audience for listening to another episode. And we will catch you on the next one.